Hey, what's up guys, and welcome back to the infamous project. If you haven't seen the first video on this 88 GT T-Top, make sure that you check it out. This is going to be the follow-up video to see if it might be possible to drive this thing off of the trailer instead of having to push it. So picked this car up last week. It's just been sitting here, and I told Dale, I'm like, man, it'd be much easier if we could actually drive this thing instead of trying to push it all around all over the place. So this car definitely hasn't run in probably 10 years. It has been sitting. So I got a couple trusty little tools and tricks that I'm going to try and do to see if this thing will fire up. So we'll jump up on here in the engine bay and we'll take a look at what I got here. So first things first, we got a battery. It's not a battery that fits the tray properly, but it's a battery. So that'll be getting hooked up, and hopefully with the key forward, we can do things like get that driver's side window down because the car is too low and it hits the fender. So at least I'll be able to kind of Dukes a hazard myself in and out of the car. Next thing, so we're gonna check the oil, and as long as there's oil in here, you know, it's a good sign. With all the forklift action that this car has seen to get it out of the yard where it was at, and the guy was kind of moving the car around with it. Just want to make sure that the oil pan isn't punctured and it lost all its oil, or you know, maybe it just is rusty and it lost its oil that way. So we'll check that out. I could put a bar on the crank pulley, but it's got this flex light fan with no shroud, so this is not very safe whatsoever, but was, you know, kind of a popular thing back in the day. So it'd actually be really hard to get a bar down in there, especially with all the straps and everything else. So I'm hoping that the motor will turn over with the starter on its own, and in fact that's going to be a key component to being able to see if it'll run. So as long as there's oil, as long as the motor will, you know, crank or turn over, then we'll be in a good position. So before that, I'm going to check the oil. If there's oil in there, I'm going to pop the distributor out, and we're going to prime the oil pump with this impact gun and a 1/4 inch socket. So the 1/4 inch hex socket is the same size as the rod that spins from the distributor that actually turns the oil pump. So what that's going to allow us to do is to build a little bit of oil pressure, get some oil throughout the motor, you know, before we go ahead and start to fire it. Now, fuel. You guys are probably like, well, the fuel's probably been sitting in this car, fuel pump might not work. So what I'll probably do is disconnect the fuel pump relay underneath the driver's seat and make sure that the pump doesn't turn on. And for the first initial startup, I'm just going to spray a bunch of brake clean into the throttle body and see if we can get it to fire off brake clean. So that's kind of the steps that I'm going to take here. Hopefully this thing will fire up. If it does fire up off the brake clean, then maybe I'll go ahead and disconnect the fuel lines at the rail. Well, at least the main, not so much the return. Then we can kind of see what kind of fuel is coming out of this thing, if any. If the tank was stored pretty low and that pump wasn't sitting in fuel, chances are it's rotted or rusted up and isn't going to turn on. So we'll get to it and we'll see what happens if we can get this 88 T-Top fired up. What do we got here? We got oil. Actually doesn't look too bad. It's right in the in between on the hash marks there, so that's a good sign. It's actually got its date coated plug wires. Check this out, guys. 1988 original plug wires still on the car. So what I'm gonna do, I'll pop the top of the distributor off here. and it looks like it's pretty much facing at the number 1 spark plug wire, so that's a good reference to have. I'm gonna try and, it actually still has wire separators and everything on here, so I'm gonna try and just clean all the debris around here. Okay, so now we should be able to pop this guy out. Okay. So you can hear initially, you know, the impact was spinning more freely, and then as soon as it started building some pressure, you know, you can hear it. So just gonna kind of spin it for maybe about 30 seconds or so. All right, you can see we got a bunch of oil on the socket, which means, you know, we're mixing stuff up. So now we'll go ahead and put our distributor back in. I think it's pretty much right around where it was. Yeah, facing number 1. So we've gone ahead and taken care of the basics. We got some oil movement. There is oil. And now the next step is going to be to see if this thing will actually crank over with its starter. God knows how original it is. And there's a lot of issues or cleanup items that need to happen in this bay. All of the mice, well, or their nests, need to be evicted and gone out of here. You might actually notice some other things about this car and some signs that it's actually not in the greatest shape. For instance, if we look down here at this driver's side frame rail, we got some really good rot down in there. So this guy's gonna have to get sorted out. One other thing that you guys might notice, there's actually no VIN numbers on the fenders. The hood has it. Front bumper cover doesn't either, which means something would have happened here at some point in its life. So the hood's VIN actually matches the body. So it's kind of odd that, you know, we don't see any stickers on the fenders, and there's no overspray. They're not stamped Ford. So something has happened at some point. Should I take that back? This one is stamped Ford. But who knows? So let's see if this thing will crank. Maneuver myself in here. Okay. Oh, window works. Pump relay here. I'm gonna try and get that disconnected. There we go. Clifford. Well, that's interesting. Looks like we have an old alarm here. Oh. That's very interesting. Look at this, guys. Okay, red light is out. Okay. I'm going to get the booster pack to get a little bit more voltage. We figured out how the old school Clifford immobilizer works, which is actually kind of cool. And we'll get some brake clean in this thing. success. I must have had that distributor off one tooth. I kind of felt like when I was putting that distributor in that the rotor went over like one spot extra, and sure enough, I moved that distributor and this thing fired up. Over to the side. I feel like that's where it was. That's where it was. Too much. That looks pretty good. Let's try this. So let's go ahead and see. We can get this thing to fire back up. Unreal. How exciting is that to hear this motor run after all those years? So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go get the fuel line disconnect tool, and we'll check and see if the fuel pump works and what type of fuel is in here, and who knows, maybe this thing will run on its own. Yeah, I'm gonna say I'd be very surprised if this fuel pump was actually working. Ooh, I actually have fuel door release. See if I can push that button. That doesn't work. Oh, that does. Right down here. Oh, that doesn't work very well now, does it? So the fuel pump relay clicks. Looks like everything should work the way that it should if we put another fuel tank in here that has a working pump. I do have one out of a parts car, the one that actually I did the video on. So that fuel tank might in fact be used to help save this guy. So that's going to have to be changed. We can't get away from it. Be interested to see if these injectors are still good or if they're all stuck. But gonna have to drop the tank and get that done. But for now, you know what? We can still start it up on brake clean. I'm going to do this super OG style. I'm going to go ahead and change this fuel tank right in this trailer because I am determined I'm going to drive this bitch off and not have to do any more pushing. So got the jack, got some jack stands, and gonna go ahead, try and get this thing up in the air. Should be two 13mm bolts up at the top there, maybe that 8mm bolt on the bracket for the filler neck. And the question is going to be is how much fuel is in this thing. I'm hoping not too much, but chances are it's going to be full, so that's going to suck. Whew. That was actually way easier than I was expecting. All right, guys, our fuel tank is out. Rubber grommet came with it. It's all torn and nasty, which I'm not surprised. So I'm gonna go ahead, pop these fittings off. See here. right? Yeah. I'm gonna go ahead and get that cleaned up with some sandpaper. Sprayed some WD-40 on it to keep the dust down. There we go. So I'm hoping I can get access to the fuel door release. Oh wow. It's not every day you actually see all of the screws holding on plastics in a hatch. I guess it just goes to show. Ooh, look at all of... Oh, this is disgusting. There's the cable though. Whew. We got it open. A wasp nest. That's gross. Look at that, the light even works in the hatch area. For the sake of being able to pour some fuel into the tank and be able to drive the car around here or there, just trying to clean stuff up as much as possible. It's all going to get stripped down anyways, but again, why make things worse when just for a couple minutes we can maybe have a little bit of temporary reliability to be able to move the car around the yard. So that's good. Filler neck is clean. Got all our main lines hooked up. Just got to get the breather tube back on the back for the tank, and then we can actually I got to get some fuel in this tank, but I'll probably just kind of tap the key and see if we can hear the pump. I'm going to disconnect the main line in the engine bay, so that way we can push out any potential bad fuel that's sitting in the fuel lines. There could be rust in there and a number of other things. So we will do that as well. So let's get to it. Siphoned out of some other vehicles, so it's not the best gas in the world, but at the end of the day, hey, this is just a little old 5 liter. It'll run on anything. There we go. Let's see if we can hear the pump prime now. Oh yeah. Okay. Whew. We're smoking out the place, but the car is running under its own power. The alternator is even charging, which is nice to see. I'll shut it down, we'll check the coolant, all those things, put it back down on the ground, and try and drive this thing right off the trailer. Whew, all right, managed to drive the car off the trailer. Got it halfway in the shop. I don't want it all the way in there because it smells. So gonna go ahead, open the doors up, hatch up, and vacuum out some of the mouse house. And yeah, power steering didn't seem to work too well, but other than that, hey, it fired up and it drove under its own power. Whew. All right guys, just kind of finished up the front driver's side there. Gonna tackle the hatch area. You can see we got the old school 6x9 boom box in here and a Sherwood amplifier with the wiring all like hacked. You know, your old probably 8 or 10 gauge rundown, you know, through the door jamb into the kick panel and underneath the driver's seat and everything else. Found a old school bra that was probably on the front bumper at some point. Now this car again was a West Coast car all the way from British Columbia, which is pretty much your equivalent of driving like Florida to Washington would be like us from almost Ontario to all the way over to Vancouver, BC. And I actually found 2 wristbands in the glove box from Molson Indy, Vancouver. Who knows what year this was? Clearly it was a long time ago, and cool little piece to find. Just sitting in the glove box there. So, you know, it's always neat going through these cars, as gross and as disgusting as this one is with all the mice feces and everything else. But we're getting it vacuumed up. We'll get it reasonably clean, but I will hold on to these and keep these as part of the history of the car. The car is mostly vacuumed out. It still smells horrible inside, but it smells a lot better than it did. Now I've been focusing on hacking off this exhaust system. Actually has the old super turbo mufflers for any of you guys who might have remembered those from back in the day. And you can see the extensive damage that was done from the forklift and trying to pick the car up from the underside. So needless to say, there was a couple kinks and blocks that probably wouldn't make this motor run very well with all the restrictions. So I've been underneath this thing with the Sawzall, cutting things off. So here it can kind of give you guys a look at what the underside looks like here. So in terms of the frame rails, everything, or the lower section of the frame, everything looks pretty clean. You can see the typical little bit of rust there where the floor pan meets the firewall, and transmission tunnel, everything till about here looks good. And if you look across the way here, you can see a massive rust hole here. You can see a rust hole there, and there's actually a hole in the back side, or actually no, it's on the other, directly on the other side of where this frame rail section stops. You could probably put your fist through that. That one's most likely a result of the T-tops leaking and water pooling on the floor pan and rotting from the inside out. Now again, on this side, you can see here this big, lovely concave mark in the floor pan. This is where the forks went in to recover this car out of the grass that it sank into. So you can see it's separating a little bit from the frame there. And in fact, this seam all along the bottom pinch weld here on the rocker panel is actually all separating and cracked as well. So this car in reality needs a complete floor pan. But other than that, it is fairly solid on the underside. You know, all of our torque boxes and everything else look to be in good shape. Just some surface rust and scab that you would expect from the car sitting so long. So gonna go ahead, get those tailpipes out of the way now, and keep them from dangling down so we can still get the car loaded up on the trailer. And we're just gonna leave the exhaust cut behind the first set of cats there. And hey, at least this thing's running and driving now. So here we go, the 88 T-Top idling out in some grass because, well, this is sort of how the car would have been found, except it was on flat tires and that skirt was literally on the ground. So 10 years it sat out in a similar condition as this one up here in Canada. So that means 4 seasons of green, snow, brown, you know, rain, weather, condensation, everything else. And amazingly enough, after 10 or more years, we got this thing running today and it's moving under its own power. It just really enforces how well all of this old school stuff was made. Like the alternator's even working. There is no pollution pump. If there were, I would have put money on the fact that that pump would have been seized. So other than some open header exhaust or open catalytic converter exhaust, you can see the car's running fine. Speed density car, so no mass air on this one. Tried to clean it up as best as I could, and it still smells inside, but it doesn't look too bad after all. So porno red interior, porno red truck in the back.
Yeah, what are you doing? You're
porno
making my
Mustang.
truck look like shit.
Why? It looks good.
Not beside this thing.
Oh, it looks way better than this.
Porno mustache. Yeah, I'm gonna bring that back.
It's got some moss growing on this seat. It's got serious issue there, but other than that, you know, we found these Vancouver Molson Indy wristbands from Vancouver. Not sure what year that was.
Can't believe it runs as good as it does.
I know, right?
Thing sat for many, many moons.
Many moons. So there we have it, guys. Gonna send it over to a friend of mine's place. It's gonna sit there for a little bit. I got a couple other projects in line, as I'm sure you guys know, but I am planning on saving this one. So I'm gonna start collecting some parts. If any of you guys have something that I need, like a full floor pan, or anything else that you can notice, T-top seals, porno red interior parts. I do want to keep the interior red, so please feel free to reach out to me at info@theinfamousproject.com. Thanks again for all your support. We'll see you guys next time.